Hi guys, my name's Emma. I'm an actor and a friend of Sporting Communities. Now, we were trying to think of ways that you could stay creative while staying inside, and we came up with the idea of stories. So when you think of stories, you quite often think of storybooks, which absolutely lots of people enjoy reading, but we've also got movies, which are basically stories that are told through dialogue and action. And we've also got video games, which are basically stories that you can play. So when you think about it, stories really are everywhere. And you don't necessarily need to be brilliant at writing to be able to come up with great story ideas. So I'm not worried about your handwriting or your spelling, but what we're interested in is what kind of ideas you can come up with for your brand new, unique, original story. So I'm going to be working quite quickly, going through how you structure a story. So if you need more time to think, you can always just pop me on pause, or you can do it in your own time after you've watched the video. So first things first, how do we start our story? Now when I'm starting a story, I like to find something to inspire me. So that might be a piece of music, or maybe a picture or a painting, or sometimes I like to use an object. So I've had a quick look around our living room and I found this, which I think is as good a starting point for a story as any. So I'd like you to have a really good look at this object. I'm going to hold it right up to the camera there. And I'd like you to try and imagine who might own this object. So who might this belong to? Could be a scientist, could be a witch or a wizard, could be an explorer. It's entirely up to you. But see if you can get a really good picture in your mind of the person that this object might belong to. So what do they look like? Are they tall? Are they short? Do they have lots of hair? Are they bald? Do they wear glasses? What kind of clothes do they wear? What are they called? What do they do? And just jot down some really quick ideas. I don't care about your handwriting or anything like that. If it's easier for you to draw it, please draw your character, is what I'm going to call it. And this is who your story is going to be about. Now this character doesn't have to be human, could be from outer space, could be a mythical creature. It's whatever comes to mind when you look at this object. And when you've jotted down some ideas, make sure you've given your character a name, because that is who our story is going to be about. Now using this object again, I'd like you to now think about where you might find an object like this. So would you find it in a science lab? Or maybe in the dusty corner of a dark attic? What comes to mind? What sort of place comes to mind when you look at this object? And again, jot down some really quick ideas. Could be some adjectives, some describing words. So it might be dark, dusty, quiet. Or you might again want to draw where you imagine this object being. So now we have a person, a character, and hopefully a place for our story to happen. So I'm going to call that our opening of our story. Brilliant. So the next stage in our story structure is what we call the build-up. So we need to think about something our character might want. So a way that might help us come to that is we might think of something our character could be good at and something our character's not so good at. Or we might think about what they do for a living. So maybe they have a job, maybe they're a student. We might also want to think about when our story is set. So is it set nowadays, in our time? Is it set in the past? Is it set in the future? Again, all entirely up to you. There's no right and wrong here. But think about something your character might want and jot that down. Brilliant. Now, as I'm sure you know, because I'm sure you've done this in school, the next thing we need in a story is a problem. So it's something that's stopping your character from getting what they want. So that could be the introduction of someone else into your story, a villain maybe, or it might be a situation that's stopping them. So again, there's no right and wrong. Maybe you could discuss it with someone that's at home with you, some ideas of what the problem could be for your story. And then, I'm sure you know what's coming next, we need to find a solution to that problem, or some people call it a resolution. So how is your character going to overcome that challenge? Maybe it's got something to do with what they do for a living, or something to do with what they're good at. Again, entirely up to you. But see if you can find an interesting and exciting way for the character to solve that problem. And then finally, stories need an ending, and I like exciting endings. So we could just put the end once the problem is solved, but I have a feeling you guys are probably cleverer than that. So you might want to finish with a twist. So something completely unexpected happens, or maybe you want to finish with a cliffhanger. So you've set up for another story, so the story's not fully concluded yet. Again, entirely up to you. So take a little look back over your ideas that you've jotted down. You should have a character, a setting for your story. You should know what your character wants. Your character should encounter a problem. Your character should solve that problem. And then you should have an excellent ending. So that's the structure there, in case you've forgotten. Lovely. And just bearing in mind, you got it all from this daft object here. So now we come to how you tell your story, and that again is entirely up to you. You might want to write it out nicely with lots of describing words, really making sure we know how your character feels and what the world around them is like. So you might want to make it into a little book. I've just folded some pages over and I've stapled them here. But if you don't have staples, you might use sellotape, or you might make little holes and put string through them. You see there is my very quick attempt at making a story book with space for pictures, obviously. Now I'm sure your handwriting and your drawing is probably nicer than mine, but that's one idea. If you don't want to write it out, you could always make a graphic novel instead, or like a comic book. And again, I've just drawn very quickly there, and then I've left space to tell the story through pictures with a bit of dialogue, so I know what's happening. Or you might decide to perform your story, maybe as a play, or you might want to film it and make a short film, or you could even do it as a podcast. So we just hear the characters' voices and sound effects, and we'll make some more videos to give you some tools to find interesting ways to tell your stories. I've also attached in the comments below some inspiring playlists, so songs to get your imagination going, and a link to some interesting images that might help you create some settings and characters for your stories. We'd love to hear what ideas you come up with, so please do comment below and let us know how you get on. Thanks so much, guys. See you soon. Bye.